The archetypal image of historical power is almost always the same: a young, extraordinarily handsome nobleman who holds the favor of the king. The French court in 1642 had exactly such a man. He is in a wooden cart, under heavy guard, and will be beheaded within the week. The man who orchestrated his downfall is 57. He cannot walk, he cannot sit upright. He is rotting from the inside, and is being carried south in a scarlet litter so massive that towns are demolishing their own walls just to let it pass. The young favorite in the cart tried to have this cleric killed. The dying man in the litter found out, obtained the documented evidence, and destroyed him from a stretcher. Armand Jean du Plessis, Cardinal Richelieu, managed the French state for 18 years. He never tried to be king. He had identified a vulnerability in the traditional methods of seizing power. A crown is a physical target. It can be isolated, and the person wearing it can be assassinated. Richelieu sought control over the invisible machinery that the crown relied upon. That cannot be killed. He began with virtually nothing, the third son of an impoverished noble family, plagued by blinding migraines and a body that frequently refused to function. His only asset was an appointment to the Diocese of Lausanne, the poorest in France, defined by marshland and a residence with holes in the roof. An ambitious cleric of his era would have treated this rural posting as a joke or a temporary exile. Richelieu went to the marshes and actually ran it for 9 years. While the rest of the court focused on horseback riding and proximity to the king, Richelieu built a different skill set. He tracked ledgers, he managed church repairs, he created a system of records that made debts and favors retrievable. The French nobility believed paperwork was beneath them. That opinion would eventually become a ruinous blind spot. In 1630, his position seemed to vanish. His patron, the Queen Mother, cornered King Louis XIII and forced a promise to dismiss him. The court did the math in minutes. They immediately abandoned Richelieu, openly flocking to his rivals before the sun went down. Richelieu got in a carriage. He followed the king to a remote hunting lodge at Versailles and had a conversation with Louis XIII that no third party ever recorded. By the next morning, the men intended to replace him were under arrest. His former patron was exiled to die in debt. The French call it the Day of the Dupes. The dupes were the people who assumed the visible maneuver, who the king liked, was the real source of power. Richelieu survived because he was the only man who understood finances, treaties, and files. Louis XIII did not particularly like him, but he could not function without him. You can fire a favorite, but you cannot fire your own operating system. The nobility regarded the law as something that happened to other people. In 1627, a high-born comte fought in a legal duel in Paris's most fashionable square, just to prove that his status placed him above the king's edicts. He was arrested. Every great family in France petitioned for mercy, assuming an elite surname like Montmorency granted immunity from the executioner. Richelieu had him beheaded in a public square. This signaled a declaration that the state now held a monopoly on legitimate violence. Your surname was no longer a jurisdiction. He scaled this logic up to international warfare at La Rochelle. The city was a Protestant fortress city operating as an independent republic with English backing. To break them, Richelieu built a wall across the sea. He engineered a mile-long dike of sunken hulks to physically block the English fleet. He sat there for 14 months and starved the city until the population dropped from 27,000 to 5,000. After destroying their military power, he signed a treaty that left their religion entirely untouched. Richelieu practiced raison d'état, reason of state. To break a Habsburg encirclement, this prince of the Roman Church used state funds to hire Protestant armies and paid them to kill Catholic soldiers. He institutionalized this control by replacing hereditary nobles with deployable administrators, answerable only to Paris. He built intelligence archives and founded the Académie Française to govern the very language the country used to think. His advantage was clinical indifference. He engineered a rational state apparatus designed to serve only itself. Richelieu destroyed the favorite from the cold open without using a weapon.
He simply obtained a treasonous piece of paper and placed it on the king's desk. He died in agony in 1642. The country celebrated his death openly because he had taxed and crushed the population to fund the machine. 6 years later, civil war erupted and kings died, but the administrative framework Richelieu built held firm. The machine was now independent of the man. The French Revolution eventually beheaded the monarchy, but it kept the centralized state because that bureaucracy was the only way to manage a nation in crisis. Napoleon later refined this exact blueprint to build an empire. The Republic administers itself to this day along lines Richelieu drew. Richelieu traded his humanity, his friendships, and public affection for the permanence of the machine. Thrones are furniture. Men are removed from them constantly. He chose to build the structure that makes the throne possible.